Interesting. It started out as, it was just a number.
Mm-hmm.
It was a number, that, people chose to wear the number, whatever the case may be. But we had took a group of kids to L.A. at the time, about 15, 20 kids, to do a football combine. I took my son, a bunch of his friends. And they did a combine. They did pretty good. Some did well. Some didn't do so well. We talked about it. They had fun. It was just our way of showing them how the competition was and what they need to work at. And when we got home, my son spent the night at his friend's house. His name was Dunn. He was on the JV team, and he wore number 2. And so he ended up, he stayed at his house that night, and I think it was the next night they were planning on going to the bowling alley. And I get a phone call late that night and said there was a shooting. There was a drive-by shooting. Something happened at the bowling alley, and everybody had to leave early. And when Donnell and them went out to the bowling alley, they had to do some chores first. They were a little bit late, so they missed everybody there. By the time they got there, it just so happened that some kids, some gang members were waiting in the parking lot, and they saw them pull up, and they just targeted their car. And they got into a high-speed chase on the freeway, and they fired numerous shots into the car, and they hit 3 people, and 2 of them died. I get a phone call 1 o'clock in the morning, not knowing what's going on, not knowing if my son was in the car or not. So, heart dropped, man. My heart just dropped, and I didn't know what was really going on for like about 20 minutes. I found out my son's mom had picked him up, so he was at home, which gave me a little bit of relief. But then again, these are all my kids.
Yeah.
These are my players, their friends, and stuff like that. So, it's automatic panic. And so he ended up losing his life in that drive-by, him and another friend of his that attended Mount Miguel. But the number 2, what happened was, from that, I know at the funeral we presented his mom with the number 2 jersey, an enclosed case, and we just kind of adapted that number. We removed it from JV, and on varsity, those that were close to him, of course, everybody wanted to honor him with that number. And so there was a couple of kids that kind of, got into the number and did extremely well, and it just kind of took on its own thing. So everybody understands that the number 2 is not a number that is chosen by anyone. I choose who wears that number. It's personal.
Yeah.
Because Donnell was a great kid. Showed up, worked every day.
Take your time, Coach. Take your time. Take your time, Coach.
A young man from the community that was supported heavily by his father and his mother, but his father was always there. I played. His father was my teammate. But I always remember him showing up, and he wasn't a father that you didn't want to talk to. He sit back, he watched his son, he corrected him when he was wrong, and they had a real good relationship. I always remember that because he called his father that day after we left. He said, "Dad, I didn't do well at all. I need to work on this, and I need to work on this." And, they just had a real father-son conversation, a real connection, yeah. And so, after that, it's hard to see your kids go through that. It's hard to bury a kid. But then as a father, for his father not to have the answers that he wanted as a father, who did this to my son, who took his life. And he couldn't get the answer. So it was hard. You know, a few months went by, a year went by. I got the other jersey. And me and my son and a couple of teammates that's really close with Donnell, we got the jersey. We got to take this jersey to his pops. This is the other 2 jersey. Mm-hmm. You know, so we went and we took it to Pop's house and we gave it to him. And we sat and we talked with him for a while. And heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm. I can see as a father how you can relate to him.
Man,
in that
it
situation.
Was heartbreaking. I mean, his father was heartbroken. Mm-hmm. Physically, mentally, he was broken. And he talked to the guys, he encouraged them. He says, I hear about you. He said, I just can't bring myself to come and see you. We invited him to the game and stuff like that. He just couldn't do it. It's kind of crazy, man. But, you know, I think a few months after that, I found a dad, you know, dead in his house. Just heartbroken.
Losing his child.
Yeah. Yeah, so that number 2, man, is real dear. You got to be a good student. Mm-hmm. You got to be a good athlete. You got to have great character. You have to want to be a leader in the community. Mm-hmm. You got to have a sense of humor. You got to be a leader. You just got to be special, man. You got to be special. You got to be extremely special. And I pick a player every year who I feel exemplifies that.
Yeah.
And they don't know who it is. You know, and some of them they don't want the number. You know, they have their own things. They like, hey, coach, I'm on phone. Can I get 5? Can I get this? Can I get this number? And I'm like, you're wearing 2. Mm-hmm. And what do you mean I'm wearing 2? You're wearing 2. The number chose you.
Yeah.
You are the leader. You're the person on this team who's going to lead by example. And we sit and have a conversation, and I explained to them about Donnell about Donnell Davis. And we just have a conversation about it. And they understand that, you know, their leadership, their role, the honor that I'm giving them of putting that number on means so much. Yeah. It means so much, not only to me, but to the team, community. Uh-huh. You know, we always twos up. Mm-hmm. We've been doing that since he passed. You know, we pay our tribute, we look up, we give our twos up, starting with Donnell. And to this day, we still do that.
Still do a national anthem,
some of the kids don't even know understand what it means, mm-hmm. or where it comes from, but you know, we will never forget that.
Yeah.
We'll never forget that. And one of the alumni, he actually wrote up a piece here about why we wear the number 2 and the significance of it. Mm-hmm. And it's just something that's near and dear to me, man. So every time we see that number,
special. Yeah,
that kid is extra special.
Yeah. Thank you for explaining that whole backstory to us. Really appreciate it. It's really been nice to watch. I'm thinking about the past number 2s.
Yeah.
And they exemplify everything you've said, you know?
Yeah, so we like this year with Roger Robinson, you know, he had the number for 2 years. And his father, when I see Donnell's father and his father.
Really?
You know, he shows up and extremely supportive. And that same type of relationship is there.
With them, yeah.
Yeah, so every time it's something from every kid that resonates from that, you know. So just the way they lead, Donnell was a character. He was funny. He kept everybody laughing all the time, but he worked so hard and was a 3.5 student, outstanding kid. He never complained about nothing.
That's a really good trait.
It is. It is. So, you know, it's a process every year. It's not something we vote on or anything like that. It's just something that you know, myself maybe one or two coaches. We like, hey, he's that guy.